Stories influence, teach, and inspire us. But what about the storytellers who create them? Uncorking a Story profiles storytellers to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. It all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin? Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Now here's your host, Mike Carlin.
Hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I'm excited to introduce you to Kristan Higgins. Kristan has sold 4.5 million books worldwide, scored 9 New York Times bestsellers, and is published in more than 24 languages. Her novels have received rave reviews from the New York Times, NPR, and regularly receive national media attention from People, Entertainment Weekly, Women's World, and more. Her latest book, Out of the Clear Blue Sky, is a story of betrayal, revenge, and healing. And those are 3 of my favorite food groups. Here today to talk about that and more is Kristan Higgins. Kristan, welcome to Uncorking a Story.
Well, thank you, Mike. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Kristan, I have to ask you the same question I ask all of my guests out of the gate is, where does your story as an author begin?
Well, I was a reader, and books were my favorite thing next to my horse. And I never thought about being a writer as, a profession. I just like to read. I felt like I was a good enough writer. I worked in advertising after college, but my writer origin story was I was a stay-at-home mom. My husband was working 2 jobs. The kids were approaching school age, and I thought I really should, give my husband a break and bring in some money on my own. And but I don't want to leave home. I want to stay home with the kiddies. And so I thought, maybe I could write a book because I've read so many. How hard could it be?
famous starting words.
Right. And so I did. I worked on a romantic comedy because I felt like people would like to read that. It's pretty universal desire to laugh when you read a book. And so I wrote one. Actually, my first book is also set on Cape Cod, and sent it out to some agents, got an agent. She sold the book, and kind of without my knowledge, I became an author for 20 years now, It was not really planned. I thought, all right, maybe I can sell a book or 2. I didn't expect to have 22. So
wow,
here we are today.
That's a great story. And just, did it happen that fast? Writing the book, finding the agent, that seems kind of like a dream situation, but did it really happen that fast for you?
No,
I imagine it didn't.
Publishing has its own time, they'll say like next week, and they mean 3 months from now, and that
right.
kind of thing. I had to learn a lot about how to get the attention of an agent, for example. I knew I wanted an agent because, business is not my thing. So I just, smothered people in mail. And this was back in the days where you mailed out a synopsis, a cover letter, the first 3 chapters, and it would sit in an agent's office in what they call the slush pile, which I've seen. And it really is like a pile of massive piles. You could build a house out of them, of manuscripts or hopefuls querying these agents. So I did that, and then I thought, I'm getting rejected constantly and very quickly. And I was thinking, are people reading my books, or am I just doing this wrong? So, or reading my submission, or am I just doing this wrong? So I did a little research. I honed my pitch to 1 sentence, sent it out in email form, and said, if you'd like to see it, contact me. And then the offers started coming in. I think you have to understand the publishing world and the agenting world. Sending something in blind is never a good idea. You should always have somebody waiting for it or requesting it. And so it probably took me 8 months to get an agent. It took me about 2 years to write my first book, because I wrote it very quickly in my own mind, 6 months. And then I revised it for a year and a half, because I knew it had to be as good as it could possibly be in order to get published. You don't send in a pretty good book, So I had some friends read it and comment on it, and I revised it again and again. And so an agent did read the blurb, the pitch, and she said, "Sure, send me the first 3 chapters." And then later that week, she said, "Send me the whole thing." And so once she read it, I had an agent within about 6 weeks. And then selling it was her job. So she went around to all the different imprints at all the different publishers, and I was actually rejected by every publisher except one, and one is all it takes.
Well, thank you for rounding out that story for me. I have to
Sure.
ask about the horse. You mentioned you were, did you grow up with horses?
I grew up with a horse.
Yeah.
I begged my father for, 11 years, the first 11 years of my life. And he got me a horse for my birthday. This crazy, wild Appaloosa that no child should have been riding, but I loved her. And she'd get out of the field, she'd jump the fence and run down the street to the neighbor's yard. And, it was quite an adventure having that horse.
My mother had a horse when
yeah?
she turned 16. She loves telling the story. She's like, all my friends got cars and I got a horse. Her horse was named Kippy. And my mother grew up in Brooklyn, New York, but my grandmother's, her mother's sister lived like way in the country in New York, and they had a farm.
Nice.
So she had this horse in the farm that she spent all summer with. And, my mother is, she's going to turn 90 years old this summer.
Wow.
And out of the blue, she's like, I wonder if Kippy is still around. And I'm like, Mom, I have some unfortunate news to share with you. It's more than likely that Kippy has gone to the great beyond. She's like, oh yes. And then she realizes what she was thinking. And,
right.
It's all
Sweet. Well, see you at the Rainbow Bridge, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And speaking of which, I have a dog. I have a golden retriever who's like 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
And every time we think she's about to cross over the Rainbow Bridge, she just gets another, energy. She's like, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm good. Like, you don't need to take me to that place I don't like to go ever.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm good.
No.
See my tail. It's wagging.
Because the thing is, we have this other dog. So that's Riley. We have Murphy, who is a 10-year-old lab. So he's no spring chicken himself. And I think Riley is thinking to herself, I can't leave them alone with him.
Yeah,
that's because she's like, he can't do the job that I do, which is true. That dog is she's a very special dog.
Oh yeah.
So there we go. Well, tell me about Out of the Clear Blue Sky. I mean, betrayal, revenge, and healing. I mean, this seems like it's got it all.
It sounds kind of dark when you say it that way, but it's also about reinvention. It's about motherhood, friendship, changing gears when your kid goes off to college. So this is the story of Lily Silva. She's a nurse on Cape Cod. She has a pretty great life. She adores her only son, who unfortunately is going to college in Montana, 2,200 miles away. The wretched boy chose Montana. And she's put her whole heart into raising this son and making this family and this beautiful home that she bought from her dad. She's the 3rd generation to live there. And she's she's trying to tell herself she's excited for the next phase of life. But like so many of us moms, we have this love-hate with our kids growing up. I mean, the goal is to raise them and have them be adults, but your heart says, no, stay with mommy. So anyway, he's going off to school. And the night before his graduation, when she's trying to tell her husband that it's okay, we'll be fine, she finds out that he's having an affair. Ooh. He tells her, and he's like, oh no, actually I'm going to be leaving you for another woman who's much younger, much richer, and much hotter.
Ouch.
I know, it's like the trifecta of doom, right? And Lily, she's heartbroken, she's stunned, she can't believe he really means it. And then she gets really, really angry because they have 5 weeks until their son goes off to football camp at the University of Montana. And they have to pretend that all is well because they want their son to have this last happy summer with them. And it's making her a little crazy.
Oh, yeah, I
She's,
can imagine. I can imagine.
She's getting her petty revenge here and there as best she can. You know, if she has to live with her cheating ex, she's going to spit into his wine.
Oh, well. Well, I'm sure she could do much worse than that.
Oh, yes. She has quite a few little tricks up her sleeve. And it's funny, one of the ways that I got some of those ideas was I put a question out on Facebook. Have you ever tried to get revenge on your ex or soon to be ex? And people were so delighted to share their stories of the little things they had done to make that cheating spouse's life just a little worse. Nothing terribly illegal, but so it was really interesting.
Can you share one of those things you learned on Facebook?
Well, one woman said she put Nair in her husband's body wash and shampoo. So he just gradually starts losing hair, and I had to use that in the book. So, and also Brad is a hypochondriac. So Lily, being a nurse, gets to seed his mind with all sorts of fears about his health when he starts losing his arm hair.
That's great. I mean, there's got to be a little humor in there, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think this is actually a very funny book, and Lily's anger towards Brad, and just, you know, it goes really deep, and it's very poignant and heartbreaking, in addition to being like really fun and empowering at times, because, you know, she's built not just this marriage, but the family. She loves her in-laws, and holidays are always at her house, and she always felt so proud of her family. And it doesn't seem fair that one person can break the whole family. And that was something I heard repeated a lot when I talked to my friends who were in similar situations, because it does seem really common. Your kids head for school, and maybe you've just been co-parents for the past umpteen years, and you kind of forgot to work on your marriage or keep your marriage important. So I would say about half of the couples in my friend circle, which is pretty large, I have to admit, about half of them did get divorced when the kids headed off.
Yeah.
So it's really heartbreaking, but it also creates a new chance at life, whether you like it or not. You know,
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I did, you know, years ago I worked, and I still do some work as a consumer insights consultant. So I'll moderate, you know, research studies, you know, in-person discussions. And I was hired by a brand, it was Pond's actually. They were trying to kind of reinvent themselves, and they had a tie-in. Years ago, there was a made-for-TV movie, I think it was called, it was based on a book called The Starter Wife. And
yes.
if you remember that book, and the movie starred, I think it was Connie Britton. And Pons wanted to do a tie-in with it because they wanted to change the perception of the brand, which it really was rooted in, like, you know, older people.
Yeah, your grandmother.
Your grandmother, exactly. And they're, you know, the brand manager was like, I don't want to work on the grandmother brand anymore. Actually wound up being a mistake trying to change the positioning so drastically, but that's a story for another podcast. But I was doing this research with women who were divorced in their 40s and dating actively in their 40s. And it was fascinating to learn, just, you know, after the initial shock of kind of going through that huge life change, they're sort of not way out of it, but their perception changed, or their outlook changed to, hey, I have a second chance at life right now. All those things I didn't get to do when I was raising my kids or when I was married to, you know, my former spouse, I'm getting a chance to do now. And it's almost like they wound up being one of the better things that ever happened to him. And I hate to make it sound trivial like that, but that's how they were sharing it with me. And it was pretty interesting to learn.
Yeah, I do think that a lot of people find that whether they wanted the split or not, you know, life is not done with them yet. And it might take a turn that you would never have predicted or never been able to manufacture in your previous relationship, but you can now. And you know, I have friends who are happily partnered after their divorce, and I have friends who say, no, I'm fine on my own, I'm actually really enjoying this.
Yeah.
And it does take a while. And in the book, in Out of the Clear Blue Sky, Lily does find that, much to her surprise, she likes living alone. She's never really lived alone. She got pregnant very unexpectedly young. And so she and her husband got married while she was just out of college. So essentially, she's never lived alone. And here she is, 41, son's in Montana. Her husband is across town with his hot new wife in their fabulous big house on the water. And she starts to find kind of almost, it's almost a surprise of like, I kind of like this.
Yeah.
You know, I have some freedom that I didn't realize I didn't have before.
Yeah.
And,
A little tale of self-discovery almost.
mm-hmm. And also, I think it's very common. You mentioned your kids were in college, and I think it's very common for us moms and dads to send the kids off and then think, and now what are we gonna do? You
Mhm.
know, what, we're done, we did it, we raised the kids, they're off. And so now what will I focus on? Because they don't need me as much as they did before. So I think it can be an exciting time. And I remember when my daughter went to college, she and I are very close. And I thought like, oh my God, the days of my baby living at home are over. I was pretty heartbroken. I cried so hard on the drive home. And then I very happily went on a European book tour. So I highly recommend European book tours or some kind of trip, you know, something to celebrate the fact that you did it. And I remember just that happy shock of feeling like life isn't done with me yet.
Yeah.
You know, I was
Yeah.
49 at the time, and I thought there's still so much in front of me that I didn't really think about because you're so focused on the kids until they get to that age.
Yeah. I mean, I know when my kids went away to school, you know, which was 2 years ago, so they're going to be juniors. We have triplets. They all left at the same time.
That's hard.
And I felt lost. Like I really had I don't want to call it an identity crisis, but I was such an active, they were such a big part of my life. I mean, every weekend going to, whether it was hockey or drama or volleyball, or just during the week, just helping them, getting them around places.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they're gone.
Right.
I didn't know, I felt like I had way too much time on my hands. I didn't know what to do with myself. So I just threw myself into work and doing more of these and writing. And that's, and now they're home for the summer, and
that's its own thing, right?
It's like, its own thing. And I'm kind of waiting for them. I'm kind of waiting for them to go back.
Exactly.
It's like, I like not having to do the dishes every single day.
Right. I know what you mean. I wrote an essay about the empty nest and how at first you just destroyed, I mean, I actually lay on my son's bed, he's the younger child, and sniffed his pillow and cried. It was like my most pathetic mom moment ever. And a couple of weeks later, my husband and I started eating later in the day, in the evening, because, we didn't have to feed a kid who then had to go do homework. And, you come home from practice, there was like a window that we had for family meals. And now we're just more casual. And we're like, hey, do you want to go away this weekend? And there's no calendar that you have to check. It's just you. And so like the first part of empty nesting is despair, but the second part is like unfettered joy and freedom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a new phase for marriage too, I think.
Yeah, it can be.
Whether it's, you reconnect with your spouse a little bit more, or you reevaluate and maybe leave.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a crossroads. It's a crossroads. So that is for sure. Tell me about your career in advertising. You mentioned you worked in advertising.
Yeah. I mean, I was an English major in college, and there's not a lot we can do in the real world. So I was lucky to get a job at a little firm in New Haven, Connecticut, and then met my husband. We moved to the city, and I worked at a couple agencies there. And I loved advertising. I ended up back in Connecticut with an agency where I stayed for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. And that was so much fun. It is, in a sense, like writing fiction. It was really good practice for being a novelist. You have to write on deadline. You have to write prose that grabs people's attention. You have to keep their attention. And I thought it was really fun. I had a lot of varied accounts. I did like insurance and tourism and food. And so it was never boring.
Yeah.
And I really did enjoy it. I was a copywriter and account exec.
Yeah, I started my career in advertising in New York, and then wound up in Connecticut doing digital. So I can definitely relate. It's a great field. I loved my advertising days. I think the business is so different now.
It is.
I don't think I'd enjoy working. Yeah, I don't think I'd enjoy working in it now. But back then, I mean, I was helping calculate GRPs and TRPs with a calculator, and
right.
We barely had computers when I first started.
I
Which is funny to say, but
it's amazing. It's amazing how fast the world's changed.
Yeah.
But it was after I left advertising to stay at home with my kids. And when my daughter was starting kindergarten, my son was in nursery school, and I thought, oh, pretty soon they'll both be in all-day school. And what will I be doing while my firefighter husband works 2 jobs and lots of overtime? I can't just vacuum the floors and make cookies, which, is very rewarding to itself for a person like me. But I have to have to bring something to the table too. I can't make him carry all the financial burden of the family. So I thought, well, maybe I could write a book. And my husband is very sweet. He's profoundly dyslexic, and he had to test for different fire departments, and he was pretty bad at test taking. And I happen to be very good at test taking. Like, he has all the life, real world smarts, and I have, the how to take a standardized exam smarts. So I helped him study and read the materials. And so when he got his dream job at the firehouse that he wanted, he said, you helped make my dream come true. Now it's your turn. So quit your job. I had a part-time job at a hospital, and write your book. And so I did. And I've been a writer ever since, which is not something that I planned. You can't really plan to be a novelist and make a living. It happens or it doesn't. It's really up to the readers who make you a novelist. People, if they buy your books, you have a career. If they don't, you don't make money off of it. So I've been really lucky. The timing of my books has generally been great. And this is my 22nd, but if you had asked me when I was 40 if I would have written 22 books, I'd have said absolutely not. That sounds really hard.
Well, it's a lot of writing in a short period of time too.
Yeah, it is. I write a book a year.
Yeah.
And I needed that amount of time. I have colleagues who write much faster than I do, and I'm always very envious of that. But it's been a great and surprising career.
Well, I want to switch gears a bit and ask some fun questions I ask everybody. First up being,
all right.
What were some of your favorite TV shows when you were a child?
I loved Star Trek, the original. It was in reruns live long and prosper, baby. I loved that show. I loved MASH. That's one of the reasons I wanted to be a doctor. I didn't want to be an author. I thought, I'll be a pediatric surgeon. But I didn't have the right kind of intellect for that. What else? I remember Saturday nights, I was a babysitter from the age of 11 on. Saturday nights was the Dukes of Hazzard, The Love Boat, and Fantasy Island. And
Oh, that's a triple. The trifecta of my childhood was summarized in that last sentence.
There you go. Right, that was our weekend.
Love all three of those shows. I don't know if the Dukes of Hazzard still holds up. I venture to say probably no.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
But Love Boat
no.
I started to rewatch during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it is as amazingly cheesy as it was back then. But I
Delicious.
love it. I love it. And Fantasy Island too, which went over my head as I was a kid. But it's just two great shows. Two great shows.
Yeah.
MASH too. I mean, that was a show. My grandfather was a surgeon in World War II. And
really?
he loved MASH. He loved MASH. So I remember watching the finale with him. It was a couple of years before he died, but for years that was the MASH finale was the watermark of what excellent TV ratings were.
Yeah.
It was like the finale of MASH in the Super Bowl were like the highest rated programs ever. And now, of course, it's the media landscape has changed so much. But
right.
Gosh, I remember that show. That was such a great show, Matt, because it took you in so many different directions. It was funny. But set in this backdrop of war, which is tragic. People died. And it was like deep. Like they had those very deep episodes whenever that like psychologist guy would come on. It was they were pretty heavy. But that was a great show. Lasted a lot longer than the Korean War, too.
It did.
The magic of Hollywood. How about music? What artists would we find on some of your playlists, assuming you have some playlists?
Well, Bruno Mars, The Boss. I'm faithful to the bands of my my college years. U2, Simple Minds. That's going back a ways. David Bowie.
Bowie was great. There's a documentary coming out about Bowie.
I can't wait to see it.
Oh God, that looks so good. I saw it promoted yesterday.
What a genius on so many
could just
fronts.
Change himself every decade and still stay relevant. I'd say the same thing about U2. I mean, they've never stayed constant. I mean, they've always evolved. And some fans hate them for it, but I love it. I love all their stuff.
Yeah, same.
I love all their stuff. And Simple Minds too. And now I got the Breakfast Club in my head. I know you're the lover of Cape Cod. What are some of your favorite places to go on the Cape? Whether it's restaurants, beaches, what do you like to do?
Well, our house is not far from Coast Guard and Nauset Light Beach. So I love to ride my bike down to Nauset Light, and they have a little path down to the ocean. And every time you go, it's just so shockingly beautiful, no matter what the weather or tide. I love Boat Meadow Beach in Eastham, which is a very gentle, small bayside beach. And I love Provincetown. I'd be hard pressed to find a town more satisfying than Provincetown in terms of beautiful homes, gardens, the best food, art galleries, very colorful people, because it was a haven for the LGBTQ community decades and decades ago. And the views, it's you can't see anything but beauty all around you in P-Town. And then I like the Land Ho in Orleans, which I included in the book. The Land Ho is this crowded little restaurant in Orleans, and it's decorated with signs of local businesses. And so my characters have to go to the Ho. I brought a copy of the book to the owner the other day, and he was so excited. I said, I'm an author and this is my book, and the Land Ho is in it, and I wanted to give you a copy. He's like, oh my God, this is so exciting.
I put the Chatham Squire in a book. But I changed the name of it. So it wasn't the Chatham Squire. It was called the Bleeding Seal. Because it's the Cape, it's Chatham, and there's a few bleeding seals there.
That's the shark capital for anyone who's not familiar with Chatham.
Have you ever done a signing at the Yellow Umbrella?
I have, and I'm doing one in a couple of weeks at where the sidewalk ends.
Oh yeah.
So there's the two bookstores. The Yellow Umbrella was maybe my first book signing. In fact,
I made the mistake of doing a book signing there on a very sunny day.
Yeah.
And I think maybe 5 people were in town that day because it's,
Yeah.
on a sunny day in Chatham, everyone's at the beach.
You have to
Um,
like bring a puppy, or something like
that's a
that.
good idea. I had 3 kids with me, and they were no help.
You didn't put them to work?
Well, I tried, but they're somewhat introverted.
I'll tell you, Mike, a funny story. One of my early book signings, I think my son was 5, and it was at a Borders, which is telling you how long ago it was.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I was sitting there in the middle of the store, and you know how people are afraid to approach because then they might have to buy the book. So my little boy, without any prompting, just ran around the store and said, "My mommy wrote a book. Will you buy it?" And I sold out in like 20 minutes. So I reminded him of that. I'm like, hey, if you're not doing anything.
See, I'm gonna have to pressure my kids to have grandkids so they can do that, because I don't think 20-year-olds going up saying, "Hey, my dad wrote a book. Like to buy it. Takes place here in the Cape. This place called the Bleeding Seal. You love it." How do you feel when you're staring at a blank piece of paper and your job is to write something that day? What emotions do you experience?
I'm going to admit that writing the first draft of a book is incredibly hard for me. And I feel like just write something. And even if you delete it all tomorrow, maybe it will spark an idea. So you'll spend the day writing 10 pages and you'll come away with 1 sentence, So I just tell myself, keep going, keep trudging through. What I love is the idea phase, where I round out all the characters and kind of make a map of where I think the book will go. And then the revising. I love revising a book. And to me, that's when my manuscript becomes a book that people would pay for. Yeah. So it's very common for me to feel like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, fix this. This is boring and dumb. I always say, before I love my books, I have to hate them. And now I've written enough books where I know that's just my process. And from that self-doubt, I pay a lot of attention to the details of the book and how to make it better. I'm really hard on myself. And that has served me very well as an author.
Yeah, no doubt. What lesson, thinking back to that first book that you wrote, what lesson about publishing do you feel like you learned or had to learn the hard way?
I think that what I learned is that most of us don't have one book that makes us. Most novelists don't get to write Carrie and have it be, a life-changing book. It's definitely a long haul career. And, this is my 22nd book. I hope to write more. Again, it's always up to the readers. If they sell well, you'll get another contract. I also didn't know how little publishers might do for marketing. Like, you mean, wait, no, there's not going to be a billboard in Times Square for me. So at first, like the marketing is we printed you and you're in a catalog that we send to booksellers, and that's it. There's no book tour. There's, right. There's no ad in the New York Times. So, so there is definitely like an organic sense to selling books, an organic aspect of that, where you just have to write a book where a reader will say, "I loved this book. You should read it." And that's how you become a best-selling author.
Yeah. It's the readers help you there.
Mm-hmm.
And last one up, if you could write a letter to your younger self, the person who never dreamed of writing, 22 books and you got more inside you. What words of advice would you give your younger self? If you could whisper in that ear of that younger person or write a letter, what would you tell the younger Kristan?
I think I would say you have more going on than you realize. I was not a self-confident kid. I, was very much in the shadow of an older sibling. And I just thought, like, I didn't feel very special or talented or anything like that. And it was really only when I started focusing on something that I loved, whether it was my children or my garden or writing books, where I thought, you know, you can do this, you just have to be determined and focused and, a little talented maybe. But mostly it's hard work and you're more than capable of doing it.
Yeah, you need that encouragement. I think authors need encouragement. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody needs encouragement, but we do need a little external validation. But this notion that, you've got more going on than you realize. I mean, that's something that really speaks to me, because I think a lot of us, do suffer from imposter syndrome at
Yeah.
some point in time. But I had a friend come up to me, recently and said, I wish you weren't so hard on yourself. I wish you could see you the way that I see you.
Yeah.
And that just meant, that meant the world to me when I heard, this person say that.
Yeah.
We happened to be at an event, and, I was working a room like, like I belong there.
Mhm.
But
There is this element of like faking it. You
yeah,
think like, I'm going to pretend to be outgoing and charming at this book talk I'm giving. And then lo and behold, you actually were outgoing and charming,
yeah,
and you think like, no one's going to like me, or they'll see through me, that whole fake thing. I remember like, I was always so surprised if I got a starred review. And I'd say like, are they sure? Are you sure it's a starred review? And so my husband has this thing when I get a starred review now, which I've been very lucky, and like every book of mine has gotten a starred review from somewhere. He'll say, "You tricked him again, honey." And I think like that's how I view it, like what a lucky accident.
yeah.
Rather
No,
than, yeah, it's a great book.
oh, that's great. And I love his part of your story too. Where it basically says to you, now it's your turn. I mean, I love
Yeah.
that. That's what I'm going to
Yeah.
name this episode. Now it's your turn.
Oh, that's lovely.
So there you go. You've inspired me. But it's funny, as I was talking to an author probably last week, and she was telling me, the same things you said. Didn't realize how little the publisher would do, how you've got to really do a lot of the marketing yourself. But she struggled with, hey, I'm kind of introverted. It's and when you do it, you actually have to go into a room, if you're at a signing, if you're at some kind of event, and really own the room. Like you have to. And the way I think about it is, hey, no one asked anyone to write a book. These ideas come to us, and we write them. Like we put them down on paper. We think they're good enough that other people should read. So if that's how the book comes to be, then when it's out, you have to act like, hey, this is something you all should read, and this is I'm the one who brought it to you. And you almost have to, like, and it's uncomfortable for me because I try to be humble, but you almost have to put humility like on a shelf somewhere and really kind of go for it, like you said, maybe
Yeah.
fake it, but
Just, believe in the book that you wrote. And one of the things that I do is I reread the book right before it comes out, so that it's fresh in my mind, because for the past year I've been working on other things. It's been kind of a chaotic year with a wedding and a baby and a death in the family, and like life. So I want to be fresh with the book again, and I'll be like, oh, that was funny, like I'll make myself laugh, or I'll appreciate a sentence. And I think, yeah, that's what you have to own when you go to the bookstore. Say, I wrote this book. One of the things I say to my readers is, I wrote this book for you. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to love it, have this emotional journey, and close it and feel like that was time well spent. I feel great because I read that book.
Yeah. Well, the book we are talking about today is Out of the Clear Blue Sky. The author is Kristan Higgins. Kristan, where are you going to be promoting this? I imagine you've got some book signings coming up. Any dates you want to promote?
Well, in Connecticut on June 7th, I'll be at RJ Julia in Madison. Actually, I'll be at the church, First Congregational Church, where because I'm a local author, I get a lot of folks coming, and so they bumped me up to the church. I'm quite honored. And then I'll be in Plainville, Mass, at An Unlikely Story, which is a bookstore owned by Jeff Kinney, who wrote Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My kids love his books. Yeah.
And the bookstore is absolutely beautiful. I'll be at the Ashland Library on June 8th. Then I'll be in New York City with Lynn Liao Butler and Samaya Dave, and we're talking about family-oriented fiction at Barnes & Noble in Union Square. And then I'll be up on the Cape doing 4 or 5 bookstores up there.
Great.
So all my appearances are listed under appearances on my website, which is KristanHiggins.com.
So you got KristanHiggins.com. Any social media that people, if they want to follow you, can follow you at?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I have a special group for my devoted readers on Facebook and Twitter, and I'm even on TikTok now.
Oh,
I know. It's just videos about the book or reposting people's videos on the book. I discovered the power of TikTok when a young woman reviewed my book and just showed herself crying because it was real. Last year's book was a real tearjerker, and sales suddenly spiked. And I was
kidding.
Like, what happened here? And one of my publicists said, you're on TikTok. One of the weepers got you on TikTok. So that, as you said, media changes so much. You have no idea what's going to, give your book a boost or get it attention. But all my social media stuff is listed on my website. So start there, KristanHiggins.com.
There you go. Well, Kristan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with me and our listeners on Uncorking a Story. I almost forgot the name of my own show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. I really like talking to you, Mike.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.